Whilst the oil majors are anticipating lucrative deals in Iraq, they're reluctant to send their staff into a highly volatile country where death squads roam the streets and kidnappings are routine. So for the time being, the field's been left to smaller players. Amongst those is Dublin-based Petrel Resources, who are currently operating in Iraq. Their boss looks forward to signing a production sharing agreement once the law is passed.
We didn't invade Iraq, to maintain human rights. I mean, look at the catastrophic consequences of the invasion. Who would argue that people are better off now than they were under Saddam's dictatorship? The reason was people wanted to secure Iraqi oil resources for international consumers, but they didn't want to steal the oil. They wanted control of the energy, and they didn't want the profits from that to go into Saddam's regime. It's hard to argue against that. But we are where we are. There's no point crying over spilt blood. Oil mixes money, science, and blood. It's always been that way, and it always will.
We have warned foreign companies against entering the oil industry of Iraq and profiting from it.
This story is partly about the new democracy in Iraq. But what about the much older democracy in Britain? Has the British government influenced the new oil law? If it has, on whose behalf?
That the British and Americans play this role and Iraqis are excluded says a lot about what we were told was going to be the democracy in Iraq.
If democracy means that thousands of people are killed every week, if it means that kidnapping of people, assassinations continuing, if it means that people will suffer with lack of utilities, electricity meaning 1 hour a day, no water, families scared to send their children to schools, then people even not ready to leave their homes because they are afraid of car bombs. This is the real life that the Iraqis are facing today.
According to Greg Mutted, the British Foreign Office has played a key role in progressing the law.
The Foreign Office played a central role in supporting the efforts of the oil companies to lobby the Iraqi government. Over the last 6 months, like the Americans, British diplomats in Baghdad and officials in Whitehall have been reviewing drafts of the law, commenting on it, trying to influence it.
But the Foreign Office adamantly denies any improper interference in the oil law beyond what they claim is simply friendly assistance to the Iraqis.
I mean, this is paranoia gone completely loopy. I've heard it in the House of Commons, that the only thing we're interested in is the oil. Well, if we were interested in the oil, we'd have done those dirty deals that so many other countries did with Saddam Hussein and the gangsters who ran his regime.
The oil companies, for the most part, have left it to the US and UK governments to influence the framework while they've been positioning themselves for later signing contracts.
It's a shameful lie, because they're not interested in the welfare of the Iraqi people. They're only interested in aggrandizing their own conspiracy theories.
As well as questions about British and American influence over this legislation, many are increasingly worried about its legitimacy under international law.
Having invaded and occupied Iraq, it's not just some trade attaché in the embassy hosting meetings between an oil company and an official where the company is hoping to do business. This is actually using their position as a military occupier to influence and shape the future structure of the country's economy in the interests of powerful companies from here. Now, I think that's completely unacceptable, and there are big questions about whether it's even legal under international law.
It would not be appropriate for oil contracts of 15 to 20 years to be signed whilst this country is still under occupation.
Concerned British MPs have voiced dismay at their government's involvement in Iraq's new oil law.
Britain and the United States are, in law, occupying forces. Therefore, they do not have the legal authority to make fundamental changes to what is happening in that country. That is the Hague Convention, and that is something that ought to be understood.
It now appears that the oil law is one result of a far wider strategy. According to one human rights lawyer, the American and British governments used the UN Security Council to help them shape Iraq's new constitution.
It was the UK and our lawyers and our civil servants who were helping draft this mass of legislation, and we have a definite legal accountability for what has now taken place, where that process has led to the Iraq oil law, which this program's talking about.
This occupation has in fact led to the fact that Iraq is being run by the Americans, particularly, or they call multinational forces, directly for at least a year or more, and indirectly and for 4 years now. We know from under the Geneva Conventions that the occupiers have no right whatsoever to change the laws, to change the ways of life in the country.
So you're not supposed to be influencing laws in other countries when you're occupying them?
Well, I don't agree with this word, occupation, anyway. I mean, I think we're there under a UN mandate. The UN is very, very keen that life for ordinary Iraqi people ought to improve, and I can't think of a better way of helping their lives to be improved than trying to increase the revenue that they get from their oil and gas.
We are against the privatization because it will lead to very high unemployment. Because when the foreign investors enter the sector, it means the laying off our local workers.
The passing of the oil law now provokes disbelief amongst many Iraqis, given the chaos across much of their country.
The timing of issuing such a law is really something that puzzles me and many others. Why now?
My colleagues, the 50 or so Iraqi oil technocrats, whose experience and status ranged from general manager to deputy ministers to ministers, had great fear that this is not the right time to enact a petroleum law, and for that reason they would prefer that this would be reviewed and repeatedly examined until such a time when there is law and order, there is complete freedom of decision making in Iraq and the like.
If you worry too much about a perfect solution, you'll have no solution. What's right is what works. The oil industry and business people generally are very good at getting things done. They cut corners, but that's what gets things done. There's no country anywhere in the world that's free of corruption, even England. Focus on getting the industry developed.
The law has been rushed through without proper study by experts in the field. And as far as we know, it has been passed to the Iraqi parliament in complete secrecy.
There's never a time, it seems to me, in history when you can say, well, we're going to put that on hold at the moment until we're more mature. Can you imagine a sovereign state, an elected government, ever saying such a thing? I can't. And the Iraqi government is quite right, I think, to press ahead with this, because it realizes that if it's to get the revenue it needs so badly, then it's got to get it from the oil and gas industry. So it is a matter of urgency for them.
While the security issues are very grave and truly the most significant obstacle to international investment, the other political questions and political uncertainties ought not be viewed as barriers. When you get a couple of these big deals to go forward, it sends a signal to the world. There is a degree of stability. There are, that deals are deals. You know, you can do business with these guys. You can do business in these countries.